The acid rain was falling hard on the roof of Outpost 7. A small supply station at the edge of human space. Captain Jared was on night duty, sitting near the scanner console, sipping cold coffee and trying not to fall asleep. The storm outside roared like a beast, shaking the steel walls every few seconds. Everything seemed normal until the alarm beeped. A motion sensor had picked up something outside the perimeter. Moving slowly toward the gate, Jared grabbed his coat, activated the external camera, and stared at the screen. At first, he thought it was a mistake, a blur, just static or windblown trash. But then the blur moved again, and he saw a figure, small, thin, and clearly in pain. It collapsed right at the gate. Acid rain still pouring down on it, eating through clothing and skin. He didn't hesitate, grabbing his emergency gear. He ran outside and reached the gate. In less than a minute, when he got closer, he saw it was a Gurland alien girl, not more than 20 in human years. Her body was shaking, her skin blistering. Her lips blue. She had no shoes, no protection, and her eyes were filled with fear. Jared opened the gate manually, pulled her into his arms, and carried her inside. She was light as a feather. Too light for someone her size. He laid her gently on the cot in the medical room and activated the shield door. The acid was dripping from her clothes, so he quickly grabbed a decontamination towel from the rack. It was warm, dry, soft, perfect for neutralizing the acid. He knelt beside her and offered the towel. She blinked slowly, looked at the towel, then at him. Her big glowing eyes widened, and she gasped like she'd seen a ghost. To Jared's surprise, she didn't take the towel. Instead, she slowly got off the cot and dropped to her knees in front of him. "What are you doing?" he asked gently, thinking she was too weak to sit properly. But she wasn't weak, not at that moment. She pressed her forehead to the floor and whispered something in a language he didn't understand. The station's auto-translator buzzed, clicked, and finally spoke in a soft, mechanical voice. "You have honored me," it said. "You have made the ancient offer." Jared stared, confused. "What?" he said. The translator buzzed again, replaying her words. "You have given the sacred cloth. I kneel before you, my claimant." His eyes widened. "Wait, what sacred cloth?" He looked at the towel in his hand, still unused, and then back at her. The girl lifted her head, tears in her eyes, and reached out carefully to touch the towel. Then she pressed it gently to her chest, like it was the most precious thing in the universe. "I don't think you understand," Jared said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm just helping, that's all." But she didn't seem to hear him, or maybe she didn't want to. She smiled softly, still on her knees, and whispered, "I am yours now, and you are mine." Jared stood there, frozen, towel still in hand, not knowing what to do. He had dealt with pirates, smugglers, and alien warlords, but never something like this. The auto-translator beeped again, showing a cultural note from its database. "Warning, in Zyran tradition, offering dry cloth to an unprotected female during acid rain is an ancient symbol of permanent union and guardianship. It is considered more serious than marriage." Jared looked at the screen, then back at her. The alien girl Zyran. Now he knew was watching him with calm devotion. She didn't seem scared anymore, just peaceful. Like she had finally found shelter, like he had just become her whole world. Without meaning to, outside, the acid rain kept falling, burning into the earth like fire. Inside, the air was warm, the lights soft, and the quiet buzz of the heater filled the silence. He didn't know her name, didn't know what she had run from. But in that moment, something inside him whispered, "You just changed her life, and maybe your own." He sighed, looked down at her, and finally said, "Okay, let's figure this out together." She looked up at him, eyes wide and glowing, and nodded slowly, as if those words were the answer she had waited for her whole life. the towel still pressed to her heart like a sacred promise. Jared didn't sleep that night. The alien girl who still hadn't said her name was resting in the medical room, curled up under a thermal blanket, still holding the towel tight against her chest. He sat near the control panel, watching the storm slowly fade on the monitor, thinking hard. That translator message echoed in his mind again and again, offering, "A dry cloth in acid rain is a sacred union gesture among Zyrenes. How could a towel mean something so serious?" In the morning, the sun peeked over the burnt hills outside, and the rain finally stopped. The girl walked out slowly, her skin healing thanks to the medical nanogales. She looked much better, clean, calm, and graceful. She bowed her head slightly when she saw Jared placing one hand over her heart. "My name is Shailani," she said softly, her voice musical but steady. "I accept the bond." "Wait," Jared said, standing up, hands raised. "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to offer anything serious. I just wanted to help." Shailani didn't seem hurt or confused. Instead, she smiled like she understood everything and forgave him before he even finished. "I know," she said, "but intention does not change." "The right," Jared sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. This was getting complicated, and things only got worse when the rest of his crew returned from their patrol mission. Sergeant Lewis, his second in command, spotted the girl first. "Hey, Cap, you finally got a house guest." He joked. Jared shot him a look. "Not funny." Then he explained what happened. "Well, part of it." Lewis whistled. "You offered her a towel. Man, do you know what that means to her people?" Jared stared. "You do?" "Yeah, kinda." Lewis shrugged. "It's like more serious than marriage. Old alien customs, you know? But don't worry, it's just symbolic. You can talk to the Zyren ambassador and clear it up." Before Jared could respond, a beeping alarm filled the room. Unidentified ship approaching fast. They rushed to the control panel, and the screen lit up with red signals. A Zyren shuttle had landed just outside the station. Not one, but 4 armored warriors stepped out. Weapons holstered but visible, Shailani stepped forward quickly. "It's my tribe," she whispered. "They've come to see if I survived." The station doors opened, and the warriors entered with sharp eyes and silent steps. Their leader, tall and cold-faced, walked straight toward Jared. "You are the human who offered the sacred cloth?" he asked, his voice deep and clear. Jared cleared his throat. "Yes, but you must take responsibility." The warrior interrupted. "She is now bound to you by right. You may reject her, but that will bring shame and dishonor to her name and possibly war between us." Jared's heart pounded. War over a towel. He looked at Shailani, who stood quietly beside him. There was no fear in her eyes, only sadness, as if she knew this would happen. As if she expected rejection again, Jared exhaled slowly. "Can I speak to your elder or ambassador? I want to understand this properly." The warrior gave a stiff nod. "The elder is on the way." The meeting took place later that evening in the station's main hall. A Zyren elder appeared via hologram, an ancient female with long, silver head ribbons and glowing purple eyes. She spoke calmly, explaining the deep history of the towel rite. "During the time of fire," she said, "our people suffered from acid skies and no shelter. Any male who gave a female warmth or protection became her protector and partner. To refuse after the offer was seen as betrayal, but I didn't know," Jared said. "We don't have that custom," the elder nodded. "That is understood, and you may step away without punishment. But no, this Shailani is not just any female. She is the daughter of a fallen leader, the last of a noble house." Jared looked at Shailani again, seeing her not just as a survivor, but as someone carrying deep loss. She never asked for pity, never begged for help. Even now, she stood tall, prepared to accept rejection with honor. That strength touched something inside Jared. Something deeper than duty, deeper than fear. He turned to the elder. "Then I'll take responsibility," he said. "I accept the bond, but I want to do it our way." Together, as friends first, Shailani blinked, stunned, then slowly smiled. The elder gave a quiet nod. So be it. Human, the Zyran warriors bowed in respect for the first time in years. Jared saw a Zyran smile back at a human without. Distrust outside, the skies were clearing. And the two suns of the planet rose slowly, casting golden light across the valley inside the station. Something new was forming, not just a bond, but a bridge, and at the center of it stood one human. One alien girl and a towel that meant far more than anyone ever thought. The morning was quiet. Too quiet. Jared walked through the hallway of Outpost 7. Deep in thought, his decision to accept the bond had changed everything, not just for him, but for the entire base. The Zyrines had left after the Elder's approval. But before leaving, they made one final request. Shailani must complete the trial of unity, and Jared must stand with her. Only then would their bond be truly recognized, and peace secured between humans and her people. Jared had no idea what this trial meant. No one gave details, only that it was old, sacred, and dangerous. When he asked Shailani, she simply said, "It's a test of heart, mind, and spirit." Jared chuckled nervously. "Great. I've only passed bar fights and zero-G drills," but she didn't laugh. She only looked at him with soft, serious eyes. "I will help you, Jared," she said. "You won't face it alone later." That day, a transport ship arrived to take them to the Stone of Calling, an ancient Zyran site buried deep beneath a ruined world. It was a dead planet, now no cities, no trees, just rocks and ruins under a red sky. But long ago, it had been the heart of her people's culture as they stepped into the underground temple. Jared felt the air grow heavier. The walls were carved with glowing symbols, shifting slowly as if alive. They reached a central chamber where a tall device, stone half stone, half crystal. Shailani stepped forward and placed her hand on the panel. A soft hum echoed, and the air shimmered. "The trial begins now," she whispered. Before Jared could speak, the world changed around him. The chamber vanished, replaced by a forest one he had never seen, but felt familiar. It was Earth, or something like it. But it was not real. It was an illusion, a mental test. "Jared." Shailani's voice echoed through the trees. "This is your mind's memory mixed with fear." He wandered through the forest, shadows following him. Suddenly, he heard voices, his old commanders, friends, enemies, all blaming him. "For things gone wrong, you failed the mission." One voice said, "You let them die." Another whispered. The weight grew heavy. Pressing on his chest like a stone, he dropped to his knees, breathing hard. But then he heard Shailani again, calm and clear. "Jared, you are not your past. You are what you choose now." With effort, he stood, forced the illusions to fade, and walked forward. The scene changed again, now showing him on trial, alone in front of Zyran judges. They asked him questions he didn't understand, speaking in riddles and emotion. What does loyalty mean when you gain nothing? What is strength when no one sees it? What is love when it demands no return? Jared closed his eyes and answered honestly, "Loyalty is staying when I could leave. Strength is protecting the weak even when I'm scared. And love is choosing someone every day, even if they never ask." The judges vanished, and this time the illusion shifted into something different. He saw Shailani as a child, crying alone in the rain, then as a warrior, standing strong, while others mocked her weakness, then as she was now silent, brave, still carrying pain in her eyes. And finally he saw himself not as a hero, not as a captain, but simply as a man who reached out a towel in kindness, The scene faded, and the real world returned. Jared collapsed to the stone floor, breathing hard, soaked in sweat. Shailani rushed to his side, holding his head in her lap. "You did it," she said softly. "You passed the trial of unity." Jared looked up, eyes filled with questions. "But what about you?" "I saw things, my fears, my failures. But what did you face?" She smiled gently, brushing his hair back. "I saw myself choosing someone who could leave, but stayed. Someone who didn't know our customs, but respected them anyway. Someone who looked at me not as a burden, but as a person." Jared tried to speak, but she placed a hand over his mouth. "You don't need to say anything," she said. "Your actions already did." The temple glowed with soft light, and from the walls, holographic carvings of the trial began to change for the first time. In centuries, a human's image appeared among the Zyran stories, a sign that a new chapter had begun, one of unity, not fear, as they left the temple, hand in hand. The skies above the ruined world began to shift, not in weather, but in light. Strange waves of energy danced like auroras across the sky. Back at the station, the council would soon hear of what had happened. But for now, Jared and Shailani simply walked quietly, two souls from different worlds, bonded not by accident, but by choice. And it all began with a towel, and the courage to understand what it really meant. The temple trial was over, but Shailani seemed distant. Even as they rode the shuttle back toward the outpost, she stared out the window, her hand tight around a small crystal she had taken from the temple floor. Jared noticed it, but didn't ask. Not yet. He could tell she was thinking deeply about something old, something heavy. When they landed, she turned to him and whispered, "There is something I must show you. Something buried, something forgotten." Jared followed her without question. They took a small Land Rover and drove across the rocky fields beyond the station, toward the edge of the mountains, where a sharp crack in the rocks led to a hidden cave. No one had mapped this place, not even the latest orbital scans. "This place doesn't exist in records," Jared muttered. Watching his scanner glitch as they entered the cave, Shailani nodded. It was erased, on purpose. The cave was dark, cold, and silent, but the moment they stepped deeper, ancient lights flickered on along the walls, symbols glowing with soft blue and violet light. The path led them to a sealed door, overgrown with dust and age. Shailani placed the crystal into a small socket on the wall, and the door hissed open. Beyond it was a vast underground chamber filled with alien machines, broken statues, and floating data crystals. Jared's jaw dropped. "This is older than the galactic age." Shailani walked forward slowly, like she was stepping on sacred ground. "This was the heart of my ancestors' empire," she said, her voice shaking before they fell. She touched a panel, and a glowing projection lit up in the center of the room. It showed her people not as refugees or tribal nomads, but as advanced beings, builders of stars, warriors of light. Jared watched as the images told a story without words. A proud race rose, united many worlds, and stood strong until they were betrayed. Other races, fearing their power, joined forces and destroyed the Zyran Empire. Their cities were burned, their names erased from all records. Their survivors hunted like animals. Only a few escaped, and they hid in the dark corners of the galaxy, forced to forget who they were. Jared stared in silence, the truth washing over him like cold water. This wasn't just about culture or marriage. Rituals, this was survival. Shailani's people had been erased, and the galaxy had moved on as if they never mattered. And now, for the first time, one of them had revealed the truth to a human. Of all people, she turned to him, eyes wet with emotion. "Now you know why I came to your outpost. I was not just lost, I was searching. I needed someone from a younger race, one not twisted by old hatred. I needed someone like you." Jared felt his chest tightened. He wanted to say something wise, something comforting, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he walked toward the floating crystal and activated one of the data logs. A message played in. Old Zyran warrior speaking in a deep, broken voice. If you find this, remember who we were. Do not forget the fire they tried to bury. Shailani stepped forward and took his hand. Her fingers were cool but steady. I want the galaxy to remember, she said. And I want them to know it was a human who helped us stand again. Jared looked at her and nodded slowly. Then we go public, he said. We show the Galactic Council this evidence, this history. They can't ignore it forever. But just as they began collecting the crystals and data cores, a sharp noise echoed through the cave, a whisper in the shadows, then a sudden flash of light. And the wall near them exploded. Jared pulled Shalini behind a broken console, his heart pounding. Someone followed us. He growled, pulling out his blaster. Shailani peeked out, her eyes glowing slightly. They don't want the truth to come out. Figures in dark armor entered the chamber. Weapons ready. They wore no insignias. No flags, only black, blank faces. They're not Zyran. Jared whispered. Not council agents either. Their shadows hit squads. Jared fired first. Taking out the front attacker, Shailani moved like wind, leaping across platforms and striking with shocking precision. Despite her size, she was powerful, quiet, deadly. Together, they pushed the attackers back, using the room's energy systems to overload the floor with light pulses. Within minutes, the chamber was silent again. Bodies on the ground, smoke in the air. Shalani was breathing hard, a small cut on her cheek. Jared limped over to her, grabbing her hand. We need to leave now, she nodded. Gathering the main crystal in her arms as they ran from the ancient chamber, the machines behind them powered down, as if going back to sleep, waiting for someone brave enough to return again. Back at the rover, Jared looked at her, eyes serious. We just made enemies, he said. Shailani held the crystal close. Then let's make truth our weapon. And with that, they drove back toward the outpost, carrying not just data, but the voice of a forgotten people. The war for truth had begun, and a towel had started it all. It was past midnight when they returned to Outpost 7. Jared locked the gates and set the perimeter to high alert. Shailani placed the ancient Zyran crystal in a shielded locker, sealing it with both human and alien encryption codes. Neither of them spoke much. They didn't have to. The attack in the ruins said it all. Someone powerful didn't want the truth exposed. Later, Jared sat in the control room, eyes on the blinking screens. Everything looked quiet. But his gut said otherwise. His hand stayed close to the blaster. Holstered at his side, he wasn't taking any chances tonight. Not after what they had seen, and certainly not after who had tried to silence them. Shailani entered the room, wearing a loose gray cloak. Her expression tired but alert. You should rest, she said softly. You've been awake for too long. Jared shook his head. I don't sleep when shadows move. She walked beside him and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. I used to think no one would believe my people's story, she whispered. Now I fear we won't live long enough to tell it. Before Jared could respond, every light in the outpost went black. The power grid shut down in an instant, and the backup systems failed to activate. Emergency red lights flickered on, but even those began to blink and fade. Then came the sound-soft footsteps, many of them too light to be human. Jared grabbed his blaster and pressed a silent alert button on his wrist. Stay behind me, he said quietly, eyes locked on the hallway. The attackers were fast. Black-cloaked figures melted through the halls, using cloaking devices and silent weapons. Their movements were too precise. This wasn't a random raid. It was a planned operation, and Shailani was the target. Jared fired first, hitting the lead intruder square in the chest. But more came from the vents, from hidden panels, even from the ceiling. The outpost shook with the sound of quiet, warm muffled screams, crackling taser bursts, and the heavy thud of falling bodies. Jared fought like a cornered wolf, each shot protecting the one thing that now mattered more than anything. Sci-Fi. She didn't just hide, she fought too, her energy blade glowing bright as she moved through shadows like water. But they were outnumbered and slowly pushed back room by room. Suddenly, a flash grenade exploded beside them, and Jared was thrown across the room. His head hit the wall, and everything went dark. When he woke, the station was silent. His mouth was dry, his limbs heavy, and his ears ringing. The control room was in ruins, screens shattered, cables torn, smoke rising. He looked around, heart pounding. "Sci-Fi," he called out weakly. "Shy." No answer. He crawled toward the storage room, dragging his injured leg. The shielded locker was open, empty. Both Sci-Fi and the crystal were gone. The words hit him like a hammer. They took her, pain turned to rage, and rage turned into fire. Jared pulled himself up and activated the backup system manually. Using emergency power, he scanned the logs. No ships had launched, but a cloaked transport had been detected for just 3 seconds. That was enough. He sent a silent message to command. Code Crimson Zyran bondmate abducted. Unknown hostile. Force requesting permission to hunt. Permission came within seconds. Approved. Jared didn't wait. He dragged himself to the hangar and powered up his personal recon ship, the Emberhawk. It wasn't big, but it was fast, loaded with stealth tech, and most importantly, equipped for extraction missions. As the ship launched into the sky, he locked onto the faint trace of the cloaked ship's engine trail. They were sloppy, rushing, thinking he'd be too injured to follow. They were wrong. Hours passed as he chased the faint signal across dark space. It led him to an asteroid field. Perfect place to hide a prisoner and wipe secrets clean. Jared landed silently, wearing blackout armor, moving like a shadow with a purpose. Inside the asteroid base, he found them, more cloaked assassins, guarding her cell. He took them down without mercy, one by one, moving through vents, ceilings, and blind corners. He was no longer just a captain, he was a storm. When he opened the cell, Sci-Fi was on the floor, bruised, chained, but still defiant. She looked up as he entered, blinking in disbelief. "You came," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "Of course I came," Jared said. Cutting her chains, they took something that's mine. Together, they escaped the base, alarms blaring behind them. The Emberhawk raced through the asteroid field, dodging enemy fire. Inside, Sci-Fi held the crystal close to her heart again. Whispering thanks to her ancestors, Jared piloted with one hand, the other gripping hers tightly. He looked over and said, "We're not running anymore, we're fighting back, outside." The stars watched silently as the Emberhawk vanished into the dark. But something had changed. The galaxy didn't know it yet. But a human and an alien girl had survived the impossible, and now they were ready to rewrite history together. The Emberhawk docked at an old human war outpost hidden deep inside a dead moon. Jared had only been here once, during his younger days. Now it stood cold, forgotten by most, but its walls still strong and its systems barely humming. It was the only safe place left for them now. Sci-Fi walked slowly beside him, her movements careful, her body still healing, but her eyes, those glowing violet eyes, were filled with something new, fire. She carried the crystal tightly in her hands, like it was a living heart. Inside it were memories, battle plans, ancient knowledge, and the names of 1,000 fallen Zyrines. And something more, something Jared didn't fully understand yet. The moment they entered the outpost, the crystal pulsed, sending a strange energy wave through the base. Old lights flickered to life, and locked doors opened on their own. "I think it recognizes your bloodline," Jared said quietly. Sci-Fi nodded. It remembers who I am in the armory. They found ancient Zyran battle gear armor fused with nanotech and powered by emotion-sensitive circuits. Most of it was broken, rusted, or sealed, but in the very back, behind a locked vault, was something special, a single suit, untouched by time, floating inside a preservation chamber. It was sleek, black, and trimmed with glowing silver lines. The chest plate bore the symbol of the first Zyran warrior queen. Shalini stared at it in silence, hands trembling. "This armor," she whispered, "was worn by my ancestor, the last one to stand before our people fell." Jared looked at her, unsure. "You don't have to wear it." He said, "It's not your burden." She turned to him, fire in her voice. "It's not a burden. It's a promise," the armor responded to her touch. Unfolding around her body like a second skin, it didn't just protect her, transformed her. She stood taller, stronger. Her form outlined by soft light and ancient power. When she looked at Jared, she was no longer the girl he found in the rain. She was something else, something that had been asleep for centuries. Now fully awake, he stepped back, stunned, shy. "Look." She smiled faintly, like someone worth listening to. The outpost comm system beeped suddenly. Jared moved fast, opening the channel. It was a transmission from a small Zyran rebel fleet, only 3 ships, but they were asking for guidance. They had heard whispers of what happened about the crystal, the truth, the attack. And Jared's daring rescue. They didn't trust the council, but they trusted the signal code tied to Shaylani's bloodline. "Where do we rally?" The voice asked. Shaylani stepped forward, her voice steady and strong. "Send them the coordinates to this outpost," she said. "We begin here." Within hours, the rebel ships arrived. Worn and damaged, but still flying. From them came Zyrines of all kinds, warriors, historians, engineers, even younglings. Each of them bowed before Shaylani, placing their palms to their hearts. One elder stepped forward, eyes wide as he looked at her. "It's true," he said. Voice cracking, the blood of the queen flows again. Jared watched from a distance. Amazed, he never expected to be part of something like this. He was just a soldier. Just a captain who once offered a towel to a scared girl in the rain. Now, that girl was standing at the head of a rising storm. But peace doesn't come without cost. As they prepared to transmit the truth to the Galactic Council video files, holographic records and the crystal's memorial warning came through. A council dreadnought had been sent to silence them. It was massive, slow, and armed with enough firepower to flatten the moon itself. They had less than 1 hour. Panic spread through the outpost. But Shaylani raised her voice above the fear. "We don't run," she said. "Not today." Jared stood beside her, loading weapons and setting shields. "We hold this ground," he said, "even if it's just the 2 of us." But they weren't alone. The Zyrines, those once broken and scattered, stood tall beside them, armed and ready. And at their front stood Shaylani, her voice calm, her armor glowing brighter with each second. She sent one last transmission, not just to the council, but across open space. "If you fear the truth, come for it," she said. But no, this we are no longer hiding. As the dreadnought entered orbit, charging its weapons, the old moon outpost came to life. Ancient Zyran systems awoke from their slumber. Powered by the crystal's connection to Shaylani, energy fields snapped on, rail cannons rose from the surface, and stealth turrets revealed themselves. The moon wasn't just an outpost, it was a sleeping fortress, and now it was fully awake. Jared looked at her one last time. "You're not just standing tall," he said. "You're leading a whole people." She nodded, eyes fierce. "And you're not just my bondmate," she said. "You're my shield." Outside, war began to rise again, but this time the Zyrines would not kneel. They would stand and fight and speak their truth. Because one girl who had been broken once now stood taller than anyone. Asterisk, the council dreadnought hung above the moon like a shadow that swallowed the stars. It was massive, thick-plated, and built for only one purpose: destruction, but on the surface below. Shailani stood tall in her ancestors' armor, and Jared stood beside her, weapon in hand. The sleeping fortress of the dead moon had awakened, and the truth could no longer be buried. The message was already sent, copied, backed up, and distributed. Across relay beacons, the truth of the Zyran people's betrayal, their fall, and their forgotten glory now floating through the stars for all to see. Inside the outpost command room, alarms blared as energy readings spiked. The dreadnought is charging its main weapon, a rebel Zyran reported. 30 seconds to impact. Jared looked at Shailani, his voice calm but serious. You sure the old moon defenses can stop that thing? Shailani didn't blink. No, but they'll know we didn't die hiding outside. The cannons began firing blasts of ancient light, and pulse rounds lit up the dark sky. The council ship fired back, lasers carving holes into the rocky surface. Explosions shook the fortress walls, sending dust and sparks into the air. Still, the defenders held their ground. Not one of them ran, not even when it seemed hopeless. Then something unexpected happened. A strange energy ripple moved across the sky, and another ship dropped from hyperspace. It wasn't human, and it wasn't Zyran. It was an older Model 1 long thought lost in the early wars, and from it came a broadcast on all open channels. This is the Freeborn Collective. We have received the Zyran Truth Transmission. We are here to stand with those who still remember. More ships followed, small scout vessels, refugee crafts, even pirate bands drawn not by duty, but by the truth. The dreadnought was now outnumbered, not by force, but by eyes. To strike now meant silencing witnesses across dozens of species. Inside the council ship, there was hesitation. And in war, hesitation is a crack. Shalini lifted her head. Voice steady through her, comes to the council above. You cannot stop the truth if you strike. You will not erase us. You will only make us louder. There was a long silence. Then, without warning, the dreadnought began to retreat. Its engines glowed, and slowly it turned away, vanishing into the stars. No words, no apologies, silence, the kind that comes from fear and defeat. Cheers rose from the outpost. But Jared didn't celebrate. He just looked at Shailani. Breathing out a deep sigh of relief. You did it, he said, voice low. You really did it. She turned to him, smiling faintly. But her eyes were tired. No, she said. We did it in the days that followed. The outpost became more than a hiding place, became a symbol. Zyrines began arriving from across the galaxy, bringing old flags, songs, and stories that had been whispered in hiding for centuries. Human reporters came too, documenting the rise of a people once considered lost. And always at the center stood Shailani with Jared close by. Quiet but unshakable. Together, they were not just symbols of peace, but of something deeper: unity born from the smallest act of kindness. One evening, after the noise had faded and the stars were bright again, Jared stood outside the station alone. He looked up at the sky, thinking of how far they had come. Behind him, soft footsteps approached, and he turned to find Shailani wrapped in a light cloak, her armor finally set aside. She held something in her hands, small, soft towel, faded and worn from time. He smiled gently. You kept that old thing. She nodded. Of course, it was the first gift I ever received without fear. It may have started by accident, but it changed everything. She stepped closer, placing the towel in his hands, and now, she whispered, It is your symbol too. Jared looked at her, eyes full of something he couldn't put into words. Not love alone, not duty, but something deeper: promise. Silent and strong, He didn't need to say anything. She already knew that night. In the quiet of a sleeping galaxy, two souls who had once been strangers now shared a future. One where ancient stories would be told again, where forgotten names would be written back into history, and where a human and an alien girl proved that kindness, no matter how small, could shake the stars.